you. Okay, today we are starting on the writing section of the SAT. We've been working on the reading section in the last couple of weeks, and we're switching over to writing, but there's a lot of things that still, the skills you learned in the writing section still kind of apply here. So before we start off, let me check that I am sharing the sound. Okay. I'm going to show you this really good video that explains everything on the writing section.
The SAT consists of tests in reading, writing and language, and math, plus an optional essay. This video focuses on the writing and language test. In this test, you'll use your skills and knowledge to revise and edit passages. You will have 35 minutes to read 4 passages and answer 44 multiple-choice questions. The topics for the 4 passages are careers, science, humanities, and history or social studies. The writing modes of these 4 passages will vary. One will be narrative, at least one will be argumentative, and at least one will be informative or explanatory. Certain passages and some questions will include tables, graphs, or charts. A graphic may provide additional support for a point made in the passage. Questions may ask you to use the graphic to correct an error in the passage, or to replace the passage's vague description with a more precise one. The passages and questions will appear this way in your test booklet. The passages may extend to more than one page, so don't assume a passage is over until you see the title of the next one. The question numbers within the passage will help you determine the section the question is targeting. When you see underlined text after the boxed number, you will be asked which of the 4 answers results in the most effective expression in the context of the passage. Some questions that ask about an underlined portion in the passage offer directions or ask an actual question. When there are no additional directions or questions, assume that you have to choose the answer that's the most effective or correct. Choose the no change answer if you think the original version presented in the passage is the best choice. Otherwise, pick one of the 3 alternatives offered in the question. When you see a boxed number and nothing else in the sentence, the question will tell you exactly what to do. When the paragraphs or sentences in a passage are numbered, you will have a question about where a particular sentence or paragraph should be placed. All of the questions on this test are based on the context of the passages. You won't be tested on isolated skills or asked to identify specific grammar rules. There are 2 categories of questions. In the first, expression of ideas, you will be asked to improve the development of the topic, the organization of information and ideas, and the effectiveness of the language. The second category is standard English conventions. These questions will ask you to recognize and correct errors in sentence structure, grammar, usage, and punctuation. You're in the right place to learn more about the SAT Writing and Language Test, right here on Khan Academy. So let's get started with some free hands-on practice.
Yeah, and so as I said in the video, the writing section basically is broken up into 2 types of questions. They'll ask you about how the passage is written, so like what claims are made and what evidence is given to support that claim and how is it organized. And then you also have all your grammar questions that we're all very used to seeing, I think. So since most of us have probably all written essays or read essays before, I want to ask you guys, what makes a good convincing essay?
I think, well, when you start off an essay, introduction has to be strong so you can like engage your readers and like not only introduction but like how you structure your essay on a whole.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And especially in the introduction, we typically have like a thesis or like an introduction to your argument, and that's really important. Anything else that people think is really important to have to an essay?
Yeah, this sounds like a question where there are no wrong answers, right, Rachel?
Mm-hmm. In the chat, Muku said, strong evidence, definitely. So on SAT, they believe that a good essay has clear arguments, so like that clear thesis, clear introduction, relevant and sufficient evidence. So this is evidence that supports the claim that you made, and then like Laurenique said, organization and structure. And then lastly, understandability. So writing that doesn't have grammatical errors or spelling errors that are hard to understand. And so this is basically, if you understand this about essay writing and what makes a good essay, this is basically what the writing section is testing on. And so they'll ask you, is this essay, is this article that you're reading, is it well written, or how would you change it so that it is well written? So kind of so for development and evidence, this is what the SAT wording for basically how would you write a good essay. We have the claims. So these are like the topic sentences and theses. And these are questions that typically ask which choice best introduces the main topic of the paragraph. We have support, which is the evidence that supports those claims that we make. And so this would be questions like which choice most effectively sets up the information that follows. And then lastly, relevance is about the relevance of the evidence. How relevant is it to the argument we're trying to make? So something like the writer is considering adding or deleting the following sentence. Should the writer make this addition here? So we've seen, you've probably seen some of these questions before. And this is basically everything in development and evidence. These are like the three types of questions we'll see about that. The other thing is organization, but we'll go over that next week. So let's talk about strategies on the writing section in general. Does anybody who's taken the writing section before or done questions about writing? Do you want to share any strategies that you might have used?
So I know I shared this last time, but y'all didn't get to hear it. So when I took the writing section, I did not read the passages all the way through. I kind of started, and then when I hit a question, I would stop and answer that question instead of like reading the whole thing. I know that works for some people and it doesn't work for others. Like some people, it's better to just read the whole thing, but it's up to you guys.
With me, sometimes I normally look through the questions first and then see what I can answer before I start reading.
That's a great strategy. So the thing about strategies is that different ones will work for different people. So I'm going to share some of my strategies, and if you've tried them before and they work for you, that's great. If you've never tried them before, I suggest trying them, seeing if they work, practicing it with a practice passage, and seeing if you like it or not. And if you don't like it, you don't have to use it, but you might find something that does work for you. So
Hey, Rachel, sorry to interrupt, but that being said, does anybody else have anything to like add that works for them? It might not work for everybody, but it might help somebody.
Um, this is maybe not the most useful strategy, but I think sometimes just reading it and trying to focus less on like getting the right answer and maybe trying to think like intuitively, how does this sound compared to other similar sentences you've read or heard? Because I think a lot of the writing is less about like what you can like infer from the passage, and it's more about just like maybe rules about the language that you have learned.
definitely. And we will go over more grammar and punctuation and all those kinds of things a little bit today, but also later in the semester. So some strategies, I'm just gonna go through them really quick because some of them have been mentioned. Reading the entire passage or not reading the entire passage. You can try whichever one you haven't tried before. Annotating, this is something from the SAT reading section that we talked about, especially for the writing section, annotating for claims and evidence, because basically sentences will either be a claim or evidence in the writing section. Using process of elimination, because on a multiple choice exam, there is only one answer. Always remember that. And so if there's an answer choice that sounds right, but not completely right, if there's any part of it that's wrong, you can cross it out completely. And then if you cross out everything except for one, then there's only one possible choice. I also really recommend reviewing all the practices or homeworks you do and then reflect on why you might have missed a question or what questions you do well on. That's always really helpful. Think about it as like math problems. You always kind of look at what you get wrong and think about why you got it wrong and keep practicing the ones that you're struggling with. And this is really big with like grammar questions. So going in, talking about grammar questions. So always practice grammar rules routinely. There's so many grammar rules on the writing section. Here's a list of some of them. And I have a link here to a resource that has a lot about punctuation. And my suggestion is just to study a little bit of grammar every single day because there's so much. So breaking it down into little pieces will help you a lot. And also identifying which ones that maybe you don't know that well and you can focus on those. So I have some practice passages here that you can work on in your groups with your tutors. And also, I don't know if I have a lot of time for this, so maybe you can do this in your groups as well, but I wanted to tell you guys about appositives as just a small grammar rule for the week. So this is when there's a phrase that's in between two commas, and it's a phrase that if you deleted it, it would still work. So this old car, the one with all the dents, means a lot to me. If you crossed out the one with all the dents, you could still read it and it would be this old car means a lot to me. And one of the biggest tips I found was that like literally crossing out that part in between the commas and seeing if the verb that comes after that matches still with the noun that was at the front is one of like the things that trips up people most. So if this said this old car, the one with all the dents mean a lot to me, it sounds okay because dents came before it, but once you get rid of it, it's like this old car mean a lot to me. You can tell that there's something wrong there. So that's really helpful. And so I have a couple examples here you can do in your groups. See if either if it's right or if there's any things you might have to change to make it correct. And here's another one. So here's some helpful resources. And then a quick plug for the college panel on Sunday. Again, there's a link here to the form that you can fill out to register for the event, and it'll be really fun. So I recommend you guys go to that.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel.